Welcome to my channel today. Today I'm going to be doing a very quick little demonstration about how to use a photograph to make an imaginative work. So I saw this photograph when I was looking for some pictures for some other things that I was doing with the ladies that we have lessons with here, and we were looking at shadows and things, and I thought this photograph had a lot of shadows in it, and they didn't actually end up using this photograph, so I thought I really wanted to do something with it because it was such a nice shape, this mushroom. So I decided that it really needed a little fairy in it. It just lent itself to something quite imaginative and popping a little fairy in that mushroom. So it's a super photograph that I got off Pixabay. So to begin with, you'll see I've sharpened my pencil there. I always use a knife to sharpen my pencils with. I don't use a pencil sharpener. They tend to snap your pencils quite often and you get a much sharper point with a knife. So I've always got a Stanley knife and keep it nice and sharp. So the mushroom itself is just a lovely shape to draw. You just set off by doing that nice big oval of that open shape, and then just the scoop of the underneath there and a very nice shaped stem where it goes a bit wider at the base. I'll put the link down below to this photograph. Like I said, it's got all that lovely light going on, but I didn't use that. I was just using it for the shape of the mushroom. So after I'd put that initial shape in of the oval, I then went back and drew in where it goes in and where it's starting to break up, because obviously as it's curled, it's just cracked a little bit around the edges, and it makes a much more interesting shape. So once I did it all in pencil, I then went onto it with a Pitt pen, and it was a size extra small, so a very nice fine Pitt pen, and just did a very linear drawing, but with one or two little bits of cross hatching to give us some shadow. So the fairy herself, I just drew her curled up very small in the centre of the mushroom. If you wanted, you could do a much bigger. You could do a sort of sitting up on the mushroom and have her bigger than the mushroom itself. So that's entirely up to you. It was really just to show you how from one little photograph you can change it into something completely different and just use that as a basis, getting that first initial shape in. So even though she's an imaginary figure, she still does not need to look convincing as a figure. So think about where things like the skull and the hips and the knees and arms and everything are going to fit in, and if it looks realistic. So even though it's imaginary, and obviously there's no such thing as fairies, or maybe you think there is, I don't know, and obviously we don't have wings, we can make that shape up by getting those things looking as if they could be real. So I decided I wanted her curled up in a ball, so I've pulled her knees up in towards her chest, and you'll see that I moved her hands a couple of times. I decided to put her hand as if it was sort of more wrapped round her and she was really snuggled down in the centre of that mushroom. So doing her in pencil first makes that a lot easier, because you are sort of making it up as you go along in a way and altering things. So if you do it in pencil first, you'll see I had quite a lot of pencil lines to rub out because I'd made one or two mistakes and adjustments, and then just pick out the lines that you really like with your pen and ignore the lines that haven't worked. When you're doing a little tiny face like this in pen, just put one or two lines on. Don't overdo it because it's going to look far too heavy for such a dainty little figure. Just keep your pen lines very faint, and just one or two. Just a little mark for the edge of her chin, a little mark for where her eyelashes are, and that's about it really, and a line for a mouth maybe, but keep it very simple. And then I just decided to colour her using the ordinary pencil crayons. So these are not water soluble ones. It was just done on an ordinary cartridge paper, quite a nice drawing cartridge paper, but nothing special. So I couldn't put any water soluble media on there or paint. I just used some ordinary crayons. Some of them are the Crayola ones out of the tin that I've had for years. That's a bit of a mixture of colours, and some from the Derwent tin that I've got. Again, that's just the ordinary studio pencils that I've got there. And I didn't put too much heavy colour on. I still wanted that line of the pen to show through. I didn't want to lose all those lines of my pen, so the colours have kept very simple. I mixed a couple of different colours on for a skin, used a little bit of pink and yellow together to get the skin tones, but I did go a little bit heavy on her face, so you'll see later on I rubbed a little bit of that off just to lighten it up. And in places where I wanted a bit of shadow, sometimes I just went over with the same colour a little bit heavier. and sometimes I used another colour on top. So with the back wing that would obviously be in shadow from the front wing, I added a little bit of blue to the mauve that I'd already put on. With the mushroom and the colours of the mushroom, I just went a little bit heavier with the same pencil, and then I put a bit of yellow around the outside edge just to catch that little bit of sunlight. So the leaves at the bottom, or vines, twigs and things, they were just again completely imaginary, and I used a few different colours on there, a couple of different greens and a yellow, just to get some bit of a variety of tone, but I didn't really think too much about where it was all going, just to get a variety. So the shadows might not necessarily be accurate to where they may be if we did know where the light source was coming from. It was just to, if you have a variety of tone and have some shadows, it's just going to lift the whole thing up and make it a bit more 3D. But it is quite illustrative. It wasn't meant to be, you know, a realistic looking painting. It was just meant to be a little illustration that you might like for a child's bedroom or something like that. So if you're not as confident about doing a figure from your imagination, you could always go and get two photographs and put the two together. So get a photograph of a mushroom and then go and get a photograph of a child, and then you can add the two together, so you've got the posture of the child, and then just make the child into a fairy by changing the hair and the dress and popping some wings on. So you can just use them as a base for getting your shapes right and your proportions right. But again, my little fairy, talking about proportions, her proportions are a bit different to you would have in a child. They're more like adult proportions, because fairies are like miniature adults rather than children, because children's proportions are very different to adult proportions. I hope that makes sense to you. So yeah, I think that's everything I've got to say about that. So it's the Faber Castell Artist Pitt pen on a very ordinary plain cartridge paper. You'll see I used it to make lots of those little lines of that texture of the underside of the mushroom. That's another thing that was really nice about this photograph, is you just get that little touch of a glimpse of the underside of the mushroom, and it makes it much more interesting with that texture of all those little shapes under there. So I didn't do them laboriously exactly as they were. I just gave an impression of those basic shapes, and in one or two places went in a little bit heavier with the pen to get some darks in. And like I said earlier, I did do some cross hatching for some of the shadows, which meant that when you put the pencil on above that, the coloured pencil, that the shadows were really already there, so you didn't need to go too heavy with the pencil, because you've already got that shape and form. And you'll see I put some shadows down one side of the mushroom stem, just gives us that 3D feeling to it. Even though it is quite illustrative and quite a flat drawing, it just peps it up a little bit by putting that tiny bit of cross hatching down one side. And if you look at the lines on the mushroom compared to the photograph, actually on the top of the mushroom, those directional lines, I've changed them slightly to make it look as if they're all going towards the little fairy, and if she's cupped in a little centre of the mushroom there, and also put some shadow underneath her, so it looks as if she's casting a shadow on the top of the mushroom. I hope you've enjoyed that. It's a little bit different to my usual style, but like I say, I was just inspired by that little shape of the mushroom. Let me know below in the comments if you have a go at something similar and how you find it. And I really just wanted to show how easy it is to do something, take something from a photograph and make it into something of your own. So thank you once again for joining me. Anything you want to ask, if you pop that in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But in the meantime, enjoy your painting and drawing, and bye for now.